First question of the day would be, what was the best thing about growing up in Houston?
The best thing about growing up in Houston is that even though I didn't speak English, Houston embraced me. It gave me, it was a great town to have fun, and we were just talking about the heat. And I don't remember as a kid ever missing or understanding that we didn't have air conditioning. You just adapted. So Houston was an embracing city. Now growing up speaking English, being the only American born in my family, Houston was very, very generous to me.
Wonderful. Thank you. And how has Houston shaped you into the person that you are today?
Today we speak over 100 languages in Houston. We're the most culturally rich and diverse city in America. And understanding that as a kid and having an experience with diversity as a young kid. I mean, going from an all Hispanic school to an all African American school, going to a predominantly white school. I learned diversity as a kid, but I learned more than anything that we have more in common than we give ourselves credit for. That in spite of our diversity, we have so much that brings us together, and that's really been a significant part of my experience and upbringing in growing up in Houston.
That's great. You will also be joining us at the Emerging Latino Leadership Mayoral Candidate Forum on September 12th at Rice University.
That's correct. That's correct.
So,
Go Owls.
Yeah. Why is your running for mayor relevant to the Houston's youth population?
I want to say that first of all, I haven't grown up yet, and I want to make sure that Houston gave me opportunity. I grew up in a tough neighborhood where tough things happen. Saw some of my friends get caught up in challenges, and got to see from the front seat of a patrol car how government fails. And so, but in spite of all that, as I mentioned earlier, Houston has given me the opportunity to work for the people for 35 years. And I want to make sure that Houston remains the city of opportunity for the next generation of young people like myself. When I was growing up, you could find a good job with just a GED education. You could find a good job actually with no formal education. You can't do that today. And so part of what I want to accomplish is making sure that our public school system is responsive to all of Houston, to all the children of Houston. Making sure that our school system is not failing us. And in spite of the fact that it's a separate governmental entity, that when a kid drops out of school, it doesn't seem to be the school district's problem anymore. But that child then becomes the neighborhood's problem, becomes the Houston Police Department's problem, becomes the county jail's problem, and potentially even the state's problem. We've got to make sure that that's not the case anymore, and we continue to inspire young people to reach for the stars in spite of any challenges that they may be confronting. I've always said that, I grew up poor, and I think like many young people that are in our community today, but I didn't feel poor. I didn't know how poor we were until I grew up. And I want to make sure that young people have that same experience, that they're not growing up feeling and knowing that they're poor, but rather just enjoying life, having the opportunity to play, having great experiences of a young person, but still being able to take the next step to becoming a decision maker, a leader in our community, a productive person that will help shape the next generation of Houston.
That's great.
So why do you think it's important that Houston's youth adult population become more civically engaged?
I think that's a great question, and it's an important mandate. I think that any of us that are in government, any of those that are in the political arena, we have to strive forward. That Houston is an extremely young city, but in spite of that, 18 to 35-year-olds are almost non-existent in the polls. They don't vote for the most part, and yet decisions are being made that affect their lives and their opportunities and the potential that the city could provide for them. And so young people have to understand that today, more so than I think any time in our generation, especially when it comes down to education and the opportunities of education, the cost of education, those decisions are being made right now and we're not at the table. Young people are not at the table. And so, in fact, I remember when I was on city council, HISD was going to reconstitute Sam Houston High School, shut it down. I mean, that was the conversation. They were going to shut down Sam Houston High School because it was low performing. And I was extremely angry because HISD had not had an effective conversation with the community. And in spite of that, they were going to still march on with what they thought they needed to do. I worked to engage the community. We had incredible progress and town hall discussions. But one of the things I did that really got the school board's attention is that I started registering 18-year-olds to vote. 18-year-olds at Sam Houston High School, and then 18-year-olds at Davis and at the other high schools in my district. Because too many decisions, critical decisions, were being made, and the constituents of those decision makers are in the schools, and yet they're not engaged. And so young people have to understand that if you don't like the way things are today, you have to step up. You have to put aside that fun experience you may be enjoying and go to the polls, get engaged, be a part of the process.
Sounds great. As mayor, how would you ensure that Houston's diverse youth population feels protected and respected by those who are tasked to keep them safe?
You know, number one is that I want to make sure that I have a good youth advisory being a part of my administration. Making sure that it's not just a check the box thing, if you will, but really asking leadership like yourself to be a part of the process and to be a part of my administration, be a part of my advisory on any given subject, not just public safety, but other things. Because this is where you really get to understand what young people are confronting, what they're concerned about on any given day. But my experience, you know, most of it has been in public safety. 23 years as a Houston police officer. I was the director of the city's anti-gang office. I was a sheriff for 6.5 years. And I supported a number of reform initiatives, like making sure that we had conversations about youth and the law. Making sure that police officers understood that just because a kid wears a sports jersey doesn't make him or her a gang member. And just making sure that young people have tattoos doesn't make them a gang member. And just because you see a young person walking down the street in a particular neighborhood doesn't make them a gang member. Those were things that I worked on as a Houston police officer and as a director of the city's anti-gang office. And then most recently as the sheriff, I supported moving the sheriff's office forward with body cameras and those type of initiatives. But I also worked with the community to help craft the policy of that technology. And so these are things that I've done. I want to do more of it, but I want to make sure that young people are invited and know that they're invited to be a part of the process of developing policy and processes. And also, if you want to be part of the instruction and the training of police officers to help give them that youth perspective, I think that's a missing dynamic right now, to be quite honest with you. We always involve the trainers and, you know, kind of folks in the industry. But we have to really stop and think that given that Houston's so young, that we cannot let police officers lose sight of the fact that young people may be young, but that doesn't mean that they don't understand what they're experiencing. And we have to make sure that that perspective is at the table.
Okay. And how do you plan to build bridges between those that grow up in Houston and the various industries that make Houston an economic powerhouse?
You know, Houston is an incredible city, and part of my platform for the economic prosperity of Houston is engaging international businesses, encouraging foreign investment, and making sure, you know, when I was on council, I traveled to China, I traveled to Turkey, I traveled to other parts of the world, and while I was there, I would tell people, come to Houston, porque las puertas de México, Centroamérica, Sudamérica se abran en Houston. Y nuestros paisanos que vengan a Houston because the doors to the world open in Houston. And so this is, I think, an important element. I think having a personal perspective as a person of the international community gives me a unique advantage to foster that encouragement of people to come. But also recognizing that the empresarios that we have in town are phenomenal people. I mean, look at the Michoacana meat market. You would have not imagined the incredible success that humble family has had simply by living out their dreams and filling a market need that they knew existed. They did it trancazos, as they say. They did it the hard way. It shouldn't be that way. And so City Hall should be responsive. We have tax abatements, we have 380 agreements, we have other resources in the City Hall toolbox. I firmly believe that those resources and those tools ought to be made available to our local entrepreneurs, our local business leaders, who may not necessarily have been born in Houston, but are people who just know that they come to this country because it's a country of opportunity, so that they can fulfill their dreams, contribute or share a bit of their culture, share a bit of their community. It's what makes Houston what Houston is, the most richly and culturally diverse country in America, where we speak over 100 languages every single day. So you got to support that, you got to engage it.
Yes, sir. And at this point, we will pull 2 questions from social media. The first one will be at High Tech Aztec asks.
That's me, actually. No. I call myself that.
What is your position on climate change? How would you address the called environment racism? Disproportionate impacts from industry.
You know, Houston, when I was on council, we worked to deal with the several things involving our environment. Mayor White attempted to create regulation of the petrochemical industry outside the city of Houston. And that was pretty brazen on his part. It didn't necessarily work, but it did work to create a bit of sensitivity within the industry. They had to pay attention to the emissions that they were releasing into our local environment, because those emissions just didn't stay in Pasadena or just didn't stay in Baytown, but they floated into the Houston area. And he wanted to raise a level of awareness in that regard. I supported that. I mean, it was tough to do. I wish we had approached it differently. But some of the other things that I tried to drive, and I think I was ahead of my time, was that we have to create more green tops across our city. City has, because of the amount of concrete, we have a lot of hot spots that ultimately affect our environment. And so, but when you look at other cities and particularly other cities across the world, they have created a number of green tops by creating gardens and green space on city-owned facilities. I tried to create that conversation for the George R. Brown Convention Center as an example. But when we built the George R. Brown Convention Center, we didn't obviously think about that. And so the engineering for the building, as I was told, wasn't prepared to sustain a structural change of that nature. But I think we have to push those things. We have to really engage that. But nothing will impact our local environment more than getting people out of their cars as much as possible. Encouraging the use of mass transit. It's why when I launched my campaign to become the mayor of Houston, I wrote light rail to my announcement. And there's a young man on there who was surprised to see me, and we started talking, and he asked me, he goes, "Hey man, what are you doing on light rail?" And my answer was simple. If the mayor of Houston won't ride light rail, who will? And think about the number of buses that you see that are not even close to being half full. And so we have to make sure that our mass transit system is truly filling the needs of our community. You know, growing up in Mexico City in Chilangolandia, as a kid I rode the metro, the light rail. As a kid I rode the buses around Mexico City getting around. And yet we look at the light rail system and our bus system as the poor people's choice of transportation. I'm going to ride the bus, I'm going to ride light rail, I'm going to bike to City Hall, because we have to make sure that we are leading by example to encourage other people to use multi-modes of transportation to get around our town. But it also means making sure that we have safe bike lanes, that we are raising the awareness of the community that people on bikes should be respected and should be cared for. So there's a number of things that we can do, but the environment does matter to me. It's why I've been a member of the Sierra Club. And I'll never forget as a kid, a very profound commercial. And I don't know if you've seen it yourself, but it's where there's a Native American canoeing down the stream and he's enjoying his beautiful water. And then the commercial transitions to seeing trash and things in his waterway. And then they segue back to him and he's crying because that's not the environment that he once had. And I think that we have to continue to pay attention to those issues, encouraging recycling, encouraging cleaner energies, inviting new technologies that will help us get there. And so to high-tech, Aztec, it's a great question. And I think you'll have a friend in me to make sure that we do all we can to make sure that our environment gets cleaner.
Okay. And we have another question from Twitter at Abel Acuna. He asks, what is the biggest misconception that the Houston public has about you?
You know, the biggest misconception is that, that's a good question. I don't think the Houston public has a misconception about me. I think they, you know, a recent independent poll came out and it put me slightly in the lead. In 56 days, I was able to raise $1.5 million with no transfers, with no loans, and never having raised that kind of money before. And so I don't think there's a misconception. I think the perspective is that I can lead the city, that I can manage the complicated issues of the city, that I can provide leadership to a thriving city and take it into the 22nd century. I don't think there's a misconception other than people are supporting me and want me to become the next mayor of Houston, and I'm excited about that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for being here today with us. We'll see you at Rice, September 12th.
Thank you. Es un honor. Mi Familia Vota. Queremos que todos voten, pero gracias por todo lo que están haciendo ustedes.
Muchas gracias por venir con nosotros hoy.
Al contrario.